Brian DeFelice, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm doing really great. Thanks for asking, and thank you so much for sharing your valuable time early in the morning at 8:30
I'm,
a.m.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So first thing first, what made you interested to come on this podcast today?
When you approached me, I thought that your energy was just really enthusiastic and exciting. And when we first met, when you talked about just wanting to make connections with the community and get more exposure for the town of Hull, I thought that's just such a great and positive thing. And yeah, I'm very excited.
Thank
So
you so
yeah.
much. And I believe that a library is one of the amazing spots here, especially in Hull, Massachusetts, wherein people get together not only to learn from the books, but at least people that are visiting here, they also have great bond of sharing and exchanging informations or knowledge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on top of that, we're in such a beautiful building. This is the historic home of Irish poet and philanthropist John Boyle O'Reilly.
Mhm.
And it's just such a beautiful building. It was literally his home.
Yeah.
So when you walk in the building, there's nothing that I get more enjoyment out of in watching people come in and they just go, oh, wow.
Right.
Because we are so different from other libraries. Um, there's lots of libraries out there that are newer and more modern, and they're beautiful, and I love them too.
Yep.
But I think there's just something so special about the classicness of this
Yep.
building.
To your point, I would gonna add when I look in on the ground floor, it looks like old school, give you that feeling that yes,
Yeah.
you're back in the time, connected with your soul, reading the books in that environment that makes you feel connected to
Yes.
yourself. And when you come on this floor, on the first floor, it definitely is a modern library, I would call it.
Yes, yeah. And that's what's so great is that we have such a great mix of the old and the new. And we're trying to do that too through our programming in that, we've been offering a lot more for children, for teens, for adults of all ages. Because, we are trying to make this a place that's welcoming to everyone and a place that people want to go beyond just coming in and reading books and learning, which of course is important and what we want.
Right.
But we also want them to engage with us as well in new and different ways.
And I think that Hull is the oldest town around the neighborhood, and people here love connecting. And to my experience, I think that the library is making the immense of difference of connecting people, not only just by providing the books, but also running different programs that we are going to talk more about during this podcast.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate that.
Who is Brian?
Who is Brian? Who is Brian? I'm still trying to figure that out. But I'll tell you up until this point. Starting from my birth, I was born in Plymouth, Massachusetts, so I'm a local boy. You probably know it if you're familiar with American history of the
Right.
Pilgrim's Landing.
Yeah.
So I lived there until I was about 7 years old. Around that time, my family moved to the city of Quincy, not too far from here.
No.
Pretty great but big change for me. I was kind of living in rural Plymouth, moved to the big city, but it was such an exciting time. I was exposed to so many different cultures and people. And yeah, after I graduated from high school, I really wasn't sure, honestly, what I wanted to do with my life.
Right.
I don't come from a family that traditionally would go to college. So I sort of thought that I would follow in their footsteps, maybe, get a job somewhere. I just wasn't sure. I was working at a supermarket at the time, and I really enjoyed it there, but, I was looking for something different. And, my father had started working for the city, and he had encouraged me to apply for a custodian position at the Thomas Crane Public Library in Quincy. So I did, and I got the job. And I worked there for 1 year, and that was my first exposure to libraries. I started my library career as a custodian.
How old you were then?
Oh, I must have been 19, 20.
Wow.
Yes, I was very young. Yeah, full-time job.
Being a
Full-time job.
teenager, doing a job in the library.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that how it differentiates the work culture in the libraries in America. But when you say that you were a teenager,
Mm.
did you find any age difference or?
When I started, there was a bit of an age difference. But it's something that I noticed, particularly in my now 21 years in the profession, is that the profession's getting younger.
Okay.
We're seeing more new professionals that are coming into the business. And also, it's evolving. Yes, we are still about the written word and the book, but we're also about ebooks, e-content. We have vast online databases that people use for research. We're constantly helping students and children with projects.
Right.
That's a seismic shift from when I was growing up in the 1980s and the 1990s. Technology has changed every sector,
right,
libraries included. And I think that's part of what got me so excited about libraries, and that I kind of got into them during this wave of change. I'm not sure how old you are, but, back in my day, when you would go into a public library, there was literally an old card catalog, and you would look through the card catalog to find your book.
Wow.
Well, now that's all a database.
Yep.
Everything is one big database. And not only is it a database, but it's also, I can see what other libraries in the network
right,
have in or have checked out, or what I can get on hold for another patron.
Wow.
So it's just, the profession has just exploded beyond that. So
I mean, when you were talking about the old times, it's one of those things that, it reminded me of in my school days. If I need to find a book, I would literally go to the librarian. He would or she would look in the register manually that, all right, you need the book of that particular subject. You will be finding that in the row 5 or row 7. And then it would be a good, amount of time investing, where is my book? But now, as you're saying, that this library is not only adapting the technology in a manner because the world is moving towards technology, but when you say that you do not only have the database for this library, but the libraries that are around,
correct,
and accessing their books availability as well, it's a tremendous amount of achievement that the library is doing.
It is. It's amazing. It's amazing how much the profession has changed. Back to sort of my story was, 1 year I started as a custodian, and after a year, I don't know what call this divine intervention. I don't know, but I went to the library director and I said, I think that I have more to offer you,
right,
other than just what I'm doing now, and she agreed.
Right.
And I actually worked in a department called Interlibrary Loan. We were at the time what's the Interlibrary Loan Center. And what that means is I was actually responsible for placing books within the network, Hull included, even though I was working in Quincy,
right,
Hull and any OCLN network library, I would place them on hold, and we would get requests from libraries throughout the, not just throughout the nation, but sometimes even throughout the world. We've sent books internationally.
Wow.
And we would take that item. So I would request a book from here in Hull. I would then send that book, mail it out to a library in Wyoming, Texas, who knows where. They would use it and enjoy it. They would send it back to us. I would check it in, and then I would send it back to Hull.
Isn't that the experience? Because it's not only about you are sharing the knowledge being transferred from Hull to Texas, but when you talk about the international levels, I think that knowledge doesn't have any limit.
Yes.
And when it comes to the receiving hand, it is the moment when you educate yourself that what else is existing in the world.
Yes.
So you have helped many people around the world with books. Which book has helped you internationally that elaborated a different culture, a different education in your career?
A specific book, there's so many. One book that I will point to that has seen a big resurgence is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Wow.
This is a book that's grounded in Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor. The book itself was his personal diary. It was actually not meant to be published. But it's just such a great wealth of information and useful knowledge on how to handle yourself, conduct yourself. I by no means am saying that I am an expert on anything that he proposes in it, but I do think that there's just such a wealth of great information that is applicable regardless of your gender or your nationality. I would ask you in turn, what was a book that has sort of influenced you in your, professional and personal journey?
I believe, this is what something that I have been hearing from my childhood from multiple people that I have been around.
Mm.
And it is a book that comes from the Hinduism culture, but then it doesn't replicate that whether you come from any religion or any culture. It is a book to give you the guidance whenever you're confused. And but the speciality of this book is that you do not need to start from the beginning and end to the end if you need any help. You open any page, read any line, and you will get your answer.
And I think I know what book you're talking about, but what is it?
Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, yeah. Such a phenomenal book. And just like, Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, like you said, you could open any page and just find something that is so profound and so interesting and has had such again, yes, it's been so instrumental in Hindu and Indian thinking, but just thinking worldwide.
Right.
Such an inspirational book. Yeah.
I think that books connect people regardless, again, where you come from, but at the same time, the kind of relationship building that you learn from books is something tremendous. I mean, I personally feel the vibe, while sitting in the library itself, it is such a positive vibe between the tons of books, not only because they come with the knowledge, but it is the amount of experience, people who have written the books. It is the energy that books generally, bring to people's
Absolutely. And, be it fiction or nonfiction, there's always something that you can learn and that you can take from the story. Even I'll point to fiction, like, yes, it might be a made up story, but oftentimes that made up story is rooted in some personal truth or some personal experience.
Right.
And yes, it's being embellished upon. There might be dragons, there might be spaceships. Right. But it's still speaking to a relatable aspect of the human condition.
What I feel that everything starts with an imagination,
Yes.
Who used to think that one day a human would be flying in the sky and reaching different countries or different part of worlds, even to the space now. It all starts with an imagination. And even if the stories are real or not, it does make you think of a possibility.
Absolutely. I point to a comic book strip that was a cartoon called Dick Tracy. And in Dick Tracy, he used to have a watch that would have a person come on and he'd talk into the watch.
Yep.
And, back then, that was ridiculous. We would have never thought that would be a real thing. It was something out of sci-fi. Well, not now.
You see all smart watches.
Yeah, all smart watches everywhere. So yeah, it is.
It's truly amazing. But how do you see being yourself in the library of Hull, being the position of a director? How different do you feel working in the Quincy Library and library in Hull?
So it's different, but it's similar.
Okay.
Our goals were still the same, educate the public, offer services, engage people, get them thinking, get them enjoying. It's not always just learning, it's also coming in and enjoying something new. Obviously there is a little bit of a culture difference in terms of, Quincy is a very big urban library.
Right.
They have a population of 100,000 people.
Right.
We're a fraction of that here. But the goals and aims are still the same. The nature of it is still the same.
Right.
So it's different, but it's similar. Yeah. And it's kind of exciting too, because I feel like Hull is also on this wave of change in the town. And I think it's kind of an exciting time too to sort of think about the library and how we can reinvent ourselves from what we traditionally were here in Hull into something new and kind of take ideas from other libraries and say, hey, that really works for them. Let's incorporate that here.
Right.
Yeah.
I see that not only when it comes to the incorporation of different ideas from different libraries, I think this place definitely have a lot of opportunities to make an immense amount of difference, especially with the library that basically teaches people of how to grow, but also help people in terms of the directions where you need to walk in.
Well, I have a great example of what you're talking about in that, I just started reading not but a few weeks ago, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
Staple, book that's been around for a long time. And, I was always scared of, I hear about like the stock market or investing in stocks. And I always think, oh my gosh, this is so much, this is way over my head.
Right.
Well, I read that book I set up a brokerage account.
Wow.
I'm dipping my toes in. I don't know where it's going to go, but you know what? Like reading that book kind of gave me the confidence to think differently about my personal finances in ways that I had never had before. So, a book can sometimes change a life.
Definitely, indeed. And especially to a point wherein most of the information, especially related to the finance of how you need to, pursue your life, is available on YouTube, is available on different social media platforms.
Yeah.
But above all of that, you chose a book to take a direction from.
Yes. And you know what? Certainly, I do compliment the knowledge that I get from the book. There are some great YouTube videos out there. But, I think that there's something special about a book that was printed and published, because to publish that book, the author, no matter what book it is, they have to go through revisions. You don't just there's work done in a YouTube video and a podcast, of course, but you really have to go through a long, arduous process to be sure that that book is as perfect as you can get it before sending it out and getting it published. And I think that there's something very special and important about that makes the information in that book even more profound, because someone had to work really, really hard to get their message out there.
And I think that when you rightly said, about the books, there is a great amount of work in the background that is done than, going to a YouTube video or comparison to a podcast. Because I think that research, the very fine word that I heard, in between our conversation, that a book is just not a book being published in a printing company and being available for the people. It is the amount of hard work, knowledge, and experience that is behind or in the background of the book that people sometimes tend to ignore or are unaware that how much it takes. So talk more about, for a particular book, what all sequences a book goes from starting to the end and then being available to the library.
So, I will say that, once the book is made available to the public, we have some great staff here who are constantly looking at books that we can purchase through vendors like Baker and Taylor and things like that, so that we can add those to the collection for people to enjoy. Something that people might not know is that libraries are actually a very organic and evolving institution, not just in terms of technology, but even our book collection. As much as we'd love to have every book under the sun in this building and in any building, that's just not realistic. It's not feasible. And part of going through library school, I have a master's in library science. Part of that is going through what's called the weeding process. You have to look through books and sort of say, is this book still relevant? Is it still something that people are interested in? Does it still serve the community? And if the answer is no, sometimes you unfortunately have to weed that book out of the collection, but it makes room for new books, for new materials, for new information. And, that's, I think, an important part of the profession that people don't sometimes understand or see. You may expect a book that you checked out 10 years ago to still be in the library, but unfortunately, we may have had to discard that book because, again, maybe people weren't checking it out. The statistics on it just aren't justifying it staying in the collection. But we're always purchasing something new and something different so that people can continue to enjoy.
I think a very valid point that comes with a change and evolution. Like, it is the evolution of the books that is now coming from the manual books to the ebooks as well. But when you say about discarding a book because no one is reading that book or the book is somewhat not making that difference, if it is not making a difference in the existing location, is there a possibility of that particular book could make a difference in some other library?
Yes. And so what we do is we actually have a few mechanisms that we utilize. In one scenario, what we do is we actually have a book thing outside, and I believe that it goes to an organization called Better World Books. And what they do is they will take those books and they will distribute them to local municipalities that may need books. I believe they may even work worldwide to deliver books to other countries as well. So even though it might not be an item that is still relevant to our library, absolutely. There's also the Friends Library book sale downstairs. Funds, we sell books right now for $1 a book. It's a bargain.
Seriously?
But every dollar that's raised from that goes towards programs and services here at the library.
Wow.
So, it's still going back into the hands of people. I would never want to see a book, disposed of or burned of.
Yeah.
So I think that it's great that even though you're absolutely right, like it might not fit in the collection, we're still trying to make good by getting that book somewhere that it can still be useful.
And I think that it's also helping people to get different tastes of different knowledge in books. Because out here itself, if there are people coming in and who have read that particular book, I think it is another opportunity for them to try something different.
Absolutely.
And that's what the best thing a library can always offer is not restricting you to a particular direction, but then is helping you to choose whichever mode you would like to walk in.
Absolutely.
So Brian, as we were talking about the evolution and change, I know that the collections of books here in this particular library is keep on getting fresh and being available of whichever type of book that you're looking for. You are doing the best of your capacity. Your team is very hardworking to offer people of help and people from the neighborhood as well. But how did the community help library to evolve and being more helpful towards people of help?
Yeah, we've had such a great outpour here in this community of just generous supporters and people who really have just shown true love for this building and this library. I work with the Friends of the Hull Public Library. They're an organization that helps raise money towards programs here at the library. They fund all of our museum passes.
Wow.
I don't know if you're aware or not, but we actually offer local museum passes at a discount price here at the library. You can book the pass through our website. And, if you wanted to go to, I'll use the aquarium as an example, you can book a pass and you get a discount just for coming through us. But that's made possible because of the generous donations that people make to the Friends of the Hull Public Library. And even though they're their own organization, they're their own 501c3, they work with me to raise money so that we can do more and more programming.
So how did that start?
Many libraries have a Friends organization, and they exist just to kind of help the library offer programs and services that maybe the municipal budget might not be able to afford. We're very lucky here in that I am supported through programming through the town. But again, we love having extra support. We're able to do more when we have more. And so the Friends have been very instrumental in helping me do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in terms of, definitely, it's one of those things like you share knowledge and you pass it to the other person. It's one of the support that you're getting from the Friends and you are passing to the community to getting special discounts, museums or different events that are running in.
Yep. And also on top of that, in terms of engagement, we've been working with local authors to come and have lectures, not just here at the library, but also at recently the Nantasket Beach Resort. We had a wonderful local author. Her name is Wendy Francis. Her new book, Feels Like Summer, is actually set here in Hull. And so, having her come here was like kind of extra special because, she's a local author. And we actually booked her over at the Nantasket Beach Resort. We had maybe 50 plus people show up to the event. We could probably handle 50 plus people here, but it was super helpful to have it over there. And, it's still a library program. It still gets people involved with us. It still gets exposure for local, authors. And I think that's a really wonderful thing. Another thing that I've done that I did at other libraries was I partnered with an organization called One Up Games. What they do is they come in and they set up in this area. Basically, they turn the library into an arcade. They bring Xbox, they bring Nintendo Switch, they bring PlayStation 5. And, kids can come in, kids and teens can come in, they can play games, they can connect with other kids who like to play games.
Wow.
And, you might be saying to yourself, well, they could play video games at home, video games, why are you doing that at the library?
Right.
But, to me, it gets them connected. It's about connection, and they're connecting with other kids their age who are passionate about video games. But it also gets them in the library. It's not uncommon when I have these programs that parents come in and they're like, wow, I never thought that I'd see this in a library. And then what do? They get a library card. Wow. They get their kid a library card. So, even though it might not seem like the most intuitive program to have at a library, I think it really does. It really does bring something. And
I think it's one of the excitements that as a childhood, I can always remember that my first identity card that I could call it is my library card that would have my picture. And as a teenager or as a kid, you always look for that identity,
Yes.
because you see your mom and your dad carrying those identity cards or maybe their social documents, and you'd be like, when am I going to get one? And I think library is one of the best organizations that allows you to keep your own identity in the very early age, even if you're not adult.
Yep. And I'll tell you this, in my wallet right now, I have my library card, and my library card, you can get new library cards. You can always upgrade, but I still have my original 1992 Thomas Crane Public library card that I keep on me, and it is still my primary card. And for whatever reason, there's many beautiful cards. We have beautiful cards here in Hull. I still hang on to that one. It might not be the nicest looking library card now because it's seen some days.
It is the memory.
But yeah, it's the memory of it. And again, tying to that identity,
It is the memory, it is the time that take you back in the time. And I think that these are the occasions that makes you always connected where you come from.
Absolutely.
So it is not only about connecting the roots, it's also kind of letting you aware that no matter where you reach, what difference are you making, never forget where you come from.
Yeah.
So Brian, it's been, first of all, for our audience, you have started working since your teenage. I'm not looking for the exact number, but approximately how many years have you been a part of this library career?
21 exactly.
21.
21. Yeah. 1 year out of high school. Yes. Yep. And I've worked for many libraries. Like I said, I started in a very big urban library. I was the IT librarian for the town of Norwood at the Moral Memorial Library for a few years. I was the assistant director in Scituate, and I'm just wrapping up my first year as the Hull Library director at the end of next month.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey. Yeah. And I'd like to add too that I also as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I don't come from a family that really traditionally went to college. While I was working full time, I did school on the side. I got my associate's degree at Quincy College. I got my bachelor's degree at Southern New Hampshire University. I got my master's in library science at San Jose State University online. And last year, I finished up my second master's degree in public administration at Suffolk University. So, in case people are wondering how libraries can change your life, I can very much tell you they do.
I can see it not only because of the position that you are handling in the library, but even with our talks in and out of the camera. I'm talking to you and I can feel and see that experience, the exposure that library has made tremendous amount of changes in your life.
Yes, yeah.
It is for your growth. It is for the difference that you're making for people and how helping the community to grow.
Absolutely.
Now with your 21 years of experience and the differences that you have seen in the last 10 years, how do you see your vision in the upcoming 10 years of libraries?
Sure. So one thing that I'm trying to institute a little bit more of here that I've seen at other libraries is introducing what's called the Library of Things collection. And the Library of Things collection are sort of non-traditional items that people can check out, use, and bring home. And these are items that you might not exactly want to purchase for yourself, but that you have a need for. Let's say, a laser level.
Right.
You're putting up a picture up on the wall, and they have this nice laser level that you can buy now that'll keep it level. Well, does it warrant you purchasing it?
Yep.
Maybe, maybe not. But what if you could get it at the library?
Yep.
You check it out, checks out for a week, you put the picture up, you bring it back, you save yourself some money.
Exactly.
And so it's looking at I think in the next 10 years, you're going to be seeing a lot more of that, a lot of kind of like the non-traditional items that, people can sort of check out and enjoy. When I worked at the Moral Memorial Library in Norwood, they had an extensive collection. We had a pressure washer that you could check out.
Wow.
They had board games. They had, all types of different battery testers. And I think that you're going to be seeing that a lot more in libraries too. I don't think that we can talk about any profession right now that's not going to be changed by AI.
Right.
I think that's on everyone's mind. Everyone's talking about it. And it's going to change and affect us too. In what ways? I don't exactly know. But, if I were to venture a guess, as I mentioned with, sort of the databases that we have, maybe you do have something that, rather than search for articles
Right.
and, different topics,
Right.
maybe it's something that you can talk into, and
Right.
maybe that interface will be much more intuitive and much more, or, responsive and easier to
Right.
use. I think that certainly could be a possibility.
Right.
In terms of that, like different reference questions.
Right.
Maybe eventually there will be, rather than call up a librarian, maybe you do first go to, I don't know, a robo interface, let's say, and you talk into it, and maybe they're able to get you the answer that you need.
Does that sometime kind of become scary? Because I know that AI is the future. I know that AI is making a lot of difference to make things easy for people.
Yes.
And AI is somehow becoming the kind of mandatory practice for people to use. Otherwise, you will not fit in the world. If you are the part of profession that would require the technology.
Yes.
Kind of a thing. So how do you see it, in terms of people who are looking to pursue their career as a librarian?
I think that, like any technology, we have to figure out how we can responsibly and ethically augment it.
Right.
So that we can make it something that's useful to librarians,
Right.
to our community. And I think it's just something that people who are going into the Masters of Library Science or libraries in general, be aware of it. Be aware that, change is coming, and like any change, that's not a bad thing. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I come from an era where you'd have to look through a card catalog, and now we have all of that on a database, and I think that's a good thing. That's a great thing.
I think that it basically tells you that what else is about to exist in this world that is just been in the talks of the people's heads, or the experts have been doing their researches, and now is the time to kind of implement of what they have been doing. And simply is to a point when the computers, laptops, mobile phones were, just in the talks that something like that could ever happen. And now it's like sky's the limit.
Exactly.
And I feel that it's my personal opinion that it's less of a scary, subject to talk on with the AI. It's more of the interesting and optimistic time to kind of experience this revolution of how things are going to help the humanity better.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting in how it shapes really all society, not just libraries, but society in general.
So talk about the most rewarding part of serving the close-knit community like Hull.
So again, Hull is an amazing community. It's so close-knit. And I think what's really rewarding for me is taking a library like this that, as we talked about, is so classic and so beautiful and so historic, and maintaining that while also pushing things in a new direction with new programs, with new services. We've shown movies here that have been, people have responded to really well. We did a documentary on climate change in Boston. Wow. And, a lot of people here in Hull feel the effects of climate change. So it was certainly a very, very relevant documentary to show here. And we got, some great numbers and great participation for things like that. So I think what's so rewarding is, every community is different, and really seeing the needs of that community, learning, because it's a learning experience for me. I don't live in Hull. I'm not, as they call them, a Hullonian. But, just learning what the community values, what they're interested in, and how I, as a librarian and as a municipal leader, can sort of tap into that and, get them talking and get them engaged. That's been very rewarding to me.
You yourself have definitely changed your life.
Yes.
And with the immense of degrees, be it the masters or still learning.
Yeah.
But one person that you have seen that literally changed his life?
I've seen quite a few individuals that I've worked with. I won't name by name, but I'm at other libraries that because of working in a library, were inspired to get their masters in library science, just similar to myself.
Right.
And I actually had a gentleman who I worked with previously who he is now working the circulation desk.
Wow.
And he started as a security guard. And he told me, he's like, you inspired me. Like when people told me, like, you went from a custodian to this job, and that's very gratifying to me that, it's not just that I did it for myself.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring for me to see other people who are like, hey, like, maybe I can do this too, or, maybe I can do something different. And that's really rewarding to me within the profession. I do want to share an experience that I had that, kind of always stays with me. And I was working at a desk at one of the libraries that I worked for, and there was a printer, a printer copier.
Okay.
And I mean, printer copiers, they're such a pain. They never work right. There's always a jam.
All they do is just switch off and switch on.
That's it. Like, they're just so frustrating. And, I saw this guy, and he was on our printer copier, and you could tell that he was just frazzled. He was trying to get it to work. So, I come up to him and, I just sort of say, oh, hey, excuse me, sir, like, can I help you with this? And he's like, geez, I'm having this trouble. I'm very familiar with the machine and the quirks and the ins and outs. So, I help him kind of get what he needs. And, in between getting him the copies and all that, you're just kind of talking,
right.
Small talk. How's the weather? How's the day going? And, I give him the copies, and he looks at me for a second. He pauses and he looks at me for a second. Like he wants to say something, but he's not sure if he says it. And he looks at me and he says, sir, I just really want to thank you for what you did. I just got out of prison and I'm just trying to get my life back on track. And this means so much to me. I'm like, I'm actually getting I'm actually getting emotional saying this. And
this is what happened, and I'll give you because guys, this is the podcast is all about. I see the gentleman having tears in his eyes, and I would say that this is the main mode of this podcast, is to bring people's experiences out. He is not only changing his life, but making differences in people who are starting to establish and restart their lives. And this is what I will admire and appreciate, people who are sharing their personal stories, professional stories, to make differences towards the world, and the responsibility that we all humans have as a community towards each other.
And thank you for that. And, to that point, I don't know the gentleman's name. I don't know that I ever saw him again. I don't know what happened to him. But, with all our talk of AI, and I'm very optimistic about AI. I think it's great. But I think that we have to remember, too, that there is that human element. And, just being kind to someone, just going up and giving them a hand and helping them in that moment of need, that is probably one of the most rewarding things that I've ever had.
One of the example, like I called you one time, and guys, he said it like, when do you want to record it? People generally, question that, why are you doing this? You are not from Hull. You're not from here. It's like, I mean, you do meet different type of people.
Yeah.
But then, having that experience that, someone is there to share, the story. Someone is there to kind of speak up.
Yeah.
Someone is there to kind of open up and share their experiences.
Yeah.
I think it's commendable.
Yeah. Thank you.
And within a day's time, you gave me your time and day schedule that come to the library. And this is what I feel that the library is all about, is welcoming people and just, swim in the ocean of books.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And get as deep as of knowledge you can get.
Thank you.
We have talked about a lot of success stories, not in just particular to the people that are coming and, getting the experience from books, but of your own personal story as well, that how it motivated you to pursue your schooling or the college and even to the master's in science now. What are the challenges that you would like to talk behind the scenes that people like me who are coming to the library just with the expectation of getting a book are not aware?
Absolutely. So one challenge of just the profession as a whole is that, a benefit of the library is that we serve everyone.
Right.
And a challenge is we serve everyone.
Right.
And that's a very broad range from birth till death. We have to have collections and programs and services that are interesting and engaging, for all different peoples. Coming from a big urban library, that also means that, when there's an uptick in mental health crisis, people are coming into the building.
Right.
And sometimes they do bring that with them. And, it can be difficult when you're working with the public to have to deal with someone who is drunk, to deal with someone who is high, to deal with someone who has passed out in the bathroom from an overdose. I have had that happen.
Would you like to talk about a particular instance or experience that you have experienced it by yourself, and how difficult was it to handle it?
Yes, yeah. I had a gentleman who was absolutely inebriated, who could barely stand up. And I did, unfortunately, have to call. This was not in Hull. I just want to make that clear. Who was inebriated. And I actually, because believe it or not, he was actually someone that I knew. And I would never do this typically, but I actually picked him up, put him on my shoulder, walked him out of the building. And unfortunately, I did have to go in and I had to call the police to kind of talk with him and have him, taken out of the building. And, I think that's sometimes a part of the profession that people don't see and don't understand, that, yes, it's rewarding to work with everyone, but it is also a challenge. And, there are people that suffer from, mental illness and drug addictions, and they can bring that into the building as well. So it's trying to, be diligent and, protect people who are, here to learn and to, enjoy. And it's very challenging. It's very challenging. But I have to say, here in Hull, this is such a nice community. It is, and not to say that we don't have our problems or issues, but it's.
I think that when it comes to counting the problems or issues, there will be no limit. But when it comes to focusing on the positivity or speaking about, the behaviors, the changes, and accepting each other, how the person, he or she is, like what you did is the right thing of helping the guy, regardless of the mental health or the position he was in at that point in time. But securing the community is one of those responsibilities that services like library or any other service that offers people, the open doors is held accountable with that responsibility. And I think that you are doing a tremendous amount of job to help people. And when you talk about the Hull itself is an amazing community. I'm living here and I can experience it all around. Like, people from different industries have retired here. People come with their own, stories, experiences, is what something that I'm looking to feature more on this podcast. What would be your recommendation of connecting with people and getting, more stories covered?
Oh my gosh, I think what you're doing now, just reaching out to community members, because, after this podcast, I'll give you some names of people that you can connect with. Wow. But I want to piggyback on that idea that, one thing that just blew my mind about working in Hull was, like you were saying, all these accomplished people and all their stories, who move here, who retire here, who just you'd never imagine just the wealth of experience and information that's in this community.
Right.
And it's just been so fascinating to me to see.
It's full of legends.
All it is. And low key, like no one's showy or anything like that. No. They're just, but they have that experience and they want to share it. And I just think that's such a gem to this community. Yeah.
I have been talking about this on my last podcast as well. Like, place where I come from, India, is like very well socially connected. And when I came here in 2021, especially in winter, I found no one is around, and that's where I was like, how am I going to survive? But then in summer, I saw a different trend altogether. Not that people are more welcoming in terms of saying, good morning, good evening, but
Yeah.
then they are ready to talk. They are ready to share their experiences. And that's when I was like, I'm not letting this thing go wasted without capturing this and helping other people.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
And I was like, it took me a while to understand this place, Hull especially. And now that I'm getting more closer to people and connecting, it is really, kind of making me more curious that what else is offered, because every time I meet one person, it brings different story and then connects with the other person.
Yeah.
And that's where, I thought that library would be one point of contact wherein I can not only get the enough recommendations of whom to connect with, but also to get the right steps where I need to walk in.
Well, thank you for thinking of us. I appreciate it. And we'll get you on the right steps. Don't worry.
So I myself am the one live example, guys, that is how, library is helping people. Not only if you are from Hull or from any part of the world, this is what libraries are all about. You get in there, you ask what you need. If you would not gonna ask, people would not gonna know that how to help you. So asking is the best thing to pursue anything that you would like to do in your careers, in your life, or just in general.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We talked about your 21 years of journey in a library, starting from basic designation now to the level of director.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see the younger generations taking the opportunity of being the part of library as a career?
Sure. So I think that for the younger generations that are coming in, there's definitely an interest in providing materials that are focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm seeing that a lot now, giving voice to minorities, giving voice to the LGBTQ community. I'm seeing a lot of that coming in. I think too that as we talked about with AI,
Right.
there's a technology aspect to it that I think definitely needs to be on people's radar if you're coming into the profession. On top of that, I think that one thing that people coming into the profession should consider is that, up until this point, we've talked about a public
Right.
library.
Right.
And it's important, I think, to remember too that, your master's in library science, yes, public libraries are amazing and they're great, but it's not just the one library profession. There's academic libraries, there's school libraries,
Right.
there's prison libraries,
Wow.
there's special collections libraries, religious libraries. So even if, you have like a specific passion, if you want to work in academia, well, you can, you might want to be a librarian at, a college. So it's thinking broadly beyond just the public library, though we're certainly happy to have people in this one. But I think it's just looking broadly that, it's a profession that is very rich in,
Diverse.
Very diverse, very diverse. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's not only, giving you the opportunity to being, in the atmosphere of knowledge, but then to being the part of, whether you said that being school, being in college, or any aspect that you can be a part of as a librarian is open for you.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm talking about a lot of initiatives that library has taken and is still doing. In which aspect the library, especially the Hull Library, is associated with schools around?
Yep.
In the neighborhood.
So, we definitely, we've been having up the street, the elementary school up the way. We've been having regular visits from the kindergarten class. They've been coming to the library. We'll usually do a story time. Actually, one time we had Officer Pettix, which is the police community dog, come so that they could meet him, which was really kind of fun and special. And, our programming director, my children's librarian, Lisa, has really been reaching out to them and trying to get them, to come here and get involved. And also for us to go over there, because I think that, it's not just about people coming to the library, it's also the library going to them. And I think that that's an important thing too. And so we're working on trying to get that and more communication going in the community. And I always make sure to reach out to the schools if I have a program that I think might be of interest, particularly to teenagers. For the high school, I reach out to them to just try to give them a heads up and let them know, and they help me sort of spread the word, which I really appreciate.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I mean, not only you are educating people with best of your experiences, but you're also open with getting along with kids, especially the teenagers who are in the age of evolving and getting ideas from them. And that's what I think that you are bringing up to the library as well to make differences in terms of the availability of books, the programs that you're running. And I think that younger generation comes with not only the unique ideas, but the kind of enthusiasm and the optimistic ideas that they come up with is something amazing, to be, being around them.
Yep. And I think just being around each other, we're in such a society now where, we're on our phones, we're in front of a screen, and, to come to the library with your friends and just hang out, just talk, read some books, like just that personal interaction is something that we still need to continue to foster.
I truly believe and feel that yes, mobile phones and social media have been one of the mode of connecting people that are, living far away. But what about the people that are living nearby?
Yeah.
It's somehow making difference, with the people. All right, well, if you live in my neighborhood and you said hi to me on a WhatsApp or on Facebook Messenger, we are fine.
Yeah.
But I think that when you get along, you sit together, sometimes you're not even talking in the library, but see the other person, which book he or she is reading, and get interested in that. It's more about the human connection, where libraries definitely make a lot of difference.
And that's why our book clubs here tend to be popular because, again, it's a place where people can read a book together and then they come and then they'll discuss it together. And, I think that's a really positive thing.
Very nice. So before we end up the podcast, the one important thing, that one book that you want everyone to at least experience once, which book that would be?
I'm gonna pick. There's so many over my career, but I'll tell one that's near and dear to my heart. It's a classic, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I just think that it's just such a fun. Yes, it's a children's book, but it's such a fun children's book with positive messages. About resilience and forgiveness. And it's just such a classic tale, kids go to another reality. But it's just, it's one of my favorites. It's sort of a book that got me to love reading. And I think that's something that everyone should appreciate and enjoy. So Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, particularly The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
One feedback that you have as a podcaster that is, starting to dig in now, what would you have your recommendations or what I'm doing right now? Is that going to make some difference in the community?
I think so, absolutely, because, you're really giving a spotlight on a wide variety of community members and, what we bring to the table and what we're doing to make, Hull a great place to live and a great place to work and a great place to visit. And, I appreciate the work that you're doing in, getting our message out and also learning a bit about you because, myself, the viewers, we're learning about you as you're learning about us. And so that I think is going to be, I'm really excited to see where this is going to go.
Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Bringing out the time early in the morning, guys. Who could imagine that someone can open the library at 8:30 in the morning just for the podcast? And it's just not the podcast to kind of record Brian and myself. It is the podcast to record the experience that Brian comes up with. This library comes with a history. And this is what this podcast is about, to capture people's experiences, to teach people, to learn people, to share ideas of how we can evolve and help the community.
And now we're going to go have some coffee.
We will. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.